Hey, got my dogs here. I'm doing this in my house. It could be chaotic. We have a lot of rescue dogs, large and fierce. Um, so just a heads up on that. All right. So I wanted to offer just a few quick observations in terms of updating the politics of Congress and the Nevada legislature. The most basic observation to make, summer of 2025, would be that the founding fathers did not anticipate political parties. I don't know why they didn't anticipate that. They themselves quickly embraced political parties, but somehow they were thinking, I think, in sort of utopian terms, coming out of the revolution. Understandable. And they were thinking, we're all in this together. We're all Americans. We're all unified here. No, we're not. Not really. And very quickly, they were not unified, right? Federalists versus anti-federalists, Federalists versus Jeffersonian Democratic Republicans, and then right up to where we are today. So, why am I mentioning this as deep historical context? Because, right, we currently have a Congress in which both houses are controlled by the Republican Party. The White House is held by a Republican president, and there are no significant checks and balances right now on President Trump. And I know some beg to differ. That's cool. But I'm just saying, me and I think my brethren, almost universally in the United States of America, as political scientists, I think it'd be safe to say we see Trump as a world historic figure. Take that as you will, either for good or for ill, or maybe some of both. He is world historic. He is grasping more power than any previous American president has sought to grasp. It's extraordinary. There's almost no words. Right? Now look, if you favor Trump, you would think that's fantastic, but I think that should be acknowledged. And if you oppose him, you find this deeply troubling. Okay. And why is he not getting significant pushback from Congress? Because political parties, right? Now look, I would argue that by and large, President Biden was kind of a very typical, just like those before him. Name any of them, Democratic, Republican, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Not world historic figures per se, right? Not seeking to grasp extraordinary executive power. Maybe pushing the envelope here and there for sure. It's what presidents do. But not this across the board massive grab at power that's unprecedented, Democratic or Republican. So, in that sense, right, certainly it's nothing new that because of political party, when Congress and the president share the same party, there's not a lot of checks and balances. But right, I would argue that with previous iterations, that didn't really matter a lot. I mean, it mattered, but not a lot. I would argue today it matters a lot because Trump is getting away with some extraordinary things that are often against the Constitution and against federal law. And the courts have been slow to sort of act as a check and balance. And the courts are never going to be as effective as Congress at checking and balancing executive power. The gears of justice work too slowly. Courts cannot enforce their decisions in any meaningful way in most cases, vis-a-vis a president who is the commander in chief of the world's most powerful military. And then, I guess I might later on to that a little bit here. That most of the judicial pushback has come from the lower federal courts. The U.S. Supreme Court, I think largely because it is 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats, which is an extraordinary situation in and of itself in a 50-50 country. But for complex historical reasons, it's right now 6-3. They're not providing a lot of pushback either. Some, but not a lot. So this is these are really I don't think you guys can appreciate because you're so young how exceptional the times are in which we are living. It's really exceptional. So Congress has been and right, Trump dominates the GOP to an extraordinary degree. He did not in Trump 1.0. I think I talked about that with you guys. He did not. He was an outsider at the time. Right? Who did the Republican establishment want in 2016 as their nominee to run for the White House? Anybody but Trump. But right, because as we talked about, right, rank and file ordinary voters now control the nomination process. Didn't used to, but they do now, right? And the choice of ordinary Republicans across the country in 2016 was Donald Trump. And the establishment was like, no, this guy's an idiot. This guy's going to be out of control. Limited competence, limited ability. He's going to be terrible. You can judge that for yourselves. But, Trump, over time, solidified his control over the party through his deep popularity with ordinary Republicans. That's his power base, right? Ordinary Republicans across the country, and independents, and a few Democrats. Right? So now he wields extraordinary power, totally, almost the opposite of what was the case in 2016, Trump 1.0. Trump 2.0 was a completely different animal. Plus, right, Trump has realized, in my first run as president, I had, sort of normal establishment Republicans within the federal bureaucracy running things. They pushed back against my crazier ideas. They stepped in as the adults in the room. Screw that. That's not going to be the case in Trump 2.0. It's going to be almost nothing but complete and total loyalists and sycophants. So that's exacerbated this sort of accumulation of power in a single person. The federal bureaucracy is also dominated by Trump to an extraordinary degree. Previous presidents, Democrat and Republican, put into place in the federal bureaucracy leadership, real people with real ideas and independence about what would serve America and the Constitution. That's largely gone in Trump 2.0, right? Loyalists and sycophants, often with limited competence. In some cases, also competence, but sycophants like Marco Rubio, who he's dying inside a little bit every day because he had a vision for being in a leadership role, heading up the Department of State, but he didn't think that he'd be doing the things that he's doing now, because in order to get that job, he had to pledge total loyalty. But he's in that position, and he's very powerful, as long as he does what Trump wants him to do in every single case. So this is really exceptional. I can't communicate that, I think, forcefully enough. Really exceptional. Yeah. And we're seeing that, right, with the big, beautiful bill and then the rescission package. Stuff that normally Congress would have said, oh, hell no. They're like, yeah, sure, why not? Why not? Apparently now there are some Republicans in Congress who have regrets. They're like, wait, what did we do? What do we do? What are we going to have to run on in 2026 in the midterms? Can we? Maybe. Right? But at the time, right, for them, it seemed better to go along with Trump, who would exact immediate vengeance rather than possible vengeance in another year and a half in the midterms. And I think, quite honestly, in terms of pure political survival, that's probably the correct call. That's probably the correct call. There are some regrets. So some Senate Republicans are saying probably you shouldn't send any more rescissions packages because you may not have the votes the next time. Clawing back money that we had already appropriated last year and pulling it back. Right? They kind of got that first rescissions package was the relatively easy stuff in terms of popularity. U.S. foreign aid. Most Americans don't support U.S. foreign aid. I think that's idiotic. It's one of the weaknesses of a democracy is ordinary people don't think about global strategic issues. They just don't. They think about themselves and their families and their communities. Understandable. I know I sound like an elitist here, and maybe I am. Right, but geostrategy suggests that U.S. foreign aid is a fantastic investment. It's a very small investment with huge bang for your buck in terms of helping other countries, helping people across the globe. It's called enlightened self-interest. Right, by helping others, you also help yourself. It's related to Joseph Nye's concept of soft power. Right, it created a very positive profile for America globally over the decades since the end of World War II. U.S. foreign aid. Now that's all blown to smithereens. Our soft power is in sharp decline. Our fellow democracies are deeply suspicious of us. That's hardly good for America in the long run. But it is what it is. So Trump targeted something that he knew that really neither rank and file Democrats nor Republicans mostly support that. There's been a bipartisan agreement ever since the end of World War II among elite Republicans and elite Democrats to push ahead with U.S. foreign aid even though it didn't have much popular support. And Trump finally said, in a way, and I would argue not in a good way, the emperor has no clothes. Like politically, this can't be supported if I oppose it strongly, and I do. Uh, and so I think, again, a lot of Republicans held their noses and said, okay, no more U.S. foreign aid. Uh, that was easy, though, politically in a way, right? And then funding for public television and public radio. Uh, Again, right? Probably not a ton of public support for that, but there had been bipartisan agreement among elites in both parties for decades that these were good investments in American democracy. Okay, what do we need for an effective media? Smart, sophisticated, hardworking, independent media. And you can do that with some government funding and get that, right? Neither PBS nor NPR was ever under the control of the U.S. government, but they did get some of their funding from that source. I believe every other democracy in the world today that's affluent puts a substantial amount of money into public media because it's such an important investment in the quality of a democracy, right? Jefferson said it. You can't have a democracy without a vigorous media, a quality media. Private media can do a lot of that, but sometimes the private media is just absolutely atrocious. And I'll be super blunt here. I listen to public radio obsessively. It's the only radio station I listen to. It's on all the time. I probably listen to it, gosh, at least 10 or 12 hours a day. I don't think I'm exaggerating. I knew that from a very early age. I was an odd kid. Uh, that this was a really good, and I always like radio. It's a really good source of information about the U.S. and the world. Really well done. It'll continue. Both of those entities will continue, public television and public radio, but they'll be on a reduced budget. I think they get about, it's a little hard to say. It's a little complicated. Maybe about 15% of their budget from the federal government. That's going to go. That's gone in that rescission package. Uh, yeah, so I would argue both of those things, really good investments in democracy, both here and abroad. Very little money spent at all. Our savings here are almost zero in terms of our total budget. But Trump wanted it. I think a lot of Republicans in Congress didn't really want it. It was a good issue for them to run on in the past, to say that they would like to get rid of these things. But I don't think many of them really wanted to do that. They just knew that was a popular thing to say. So they can have it both ways, right? We don't like U.S. foreign aid or public television or public radio. And we're trying to kill it, but we just can't. Sorry, man. And now they actually had to kill it. And they're like, shit. Number one, there goes our issue. And number two, this is not a good long-term decision for democracy here and abroad. So that's what I see happening with Congress. It's kind of a shit show right now. I think the further and depending on what happens in the midterms in 2026, the further you get from the midterms, the less power any president has with Congress, even within his own party, because that president, right, is becoming a lame duck president. They're on their way out the door. They can't run again. Their leverage is a lot less, especially if Democrats retake the House, which I think is likely. So this is kind of a moment in time, but it's a dramatic moment in time. Probably it'll be about 2 years where Trump has unfettered power with some pushback from the federal courts. And Congress now is saying, but so far they've been saying and not doing, that they will protect the institutional powers of the legislative branch. We'll see. Color me a little bit unconvinced. The Nevada legislature, its relationship with the governor, I would say this. Nevada's politics have been somewhat insulated from what's happening nationally in terms of deep polarization. We actually get along reasonably well here in Nevada, Democrats and Republicans, relative to what's happening nationally. But that's starting to fray, as it had to. It's starting to fray. But even now, right, we have Governor Lombardo. I like that guy, by and large. And I'm a lifelong Democrat. He's a Republican, but he's pretty moderate. A little less so now because Trump has become so powerful. He's had to sort of lean in Trump's direction of necessity. I don't think he's thrilled about it, but he's not. He's not stupid. He's very smart. He's worked pretty well with the Democrats in the legislature, who control both houses, Assembly and Senate. Um, he did veto 85 bills this last legislative session. That's a new record. The previous record was 75 bills in 2023. Lombardo, Democrats in the legislature. Those are both historic highs. But I think in both sessions he signed into law over 500 bills. So I wouldn't get too hyped about record number of vetoes by Lombardo. I still think that's, again, I think he's been pushed in that direction by MAGA and Trumpism and all of that, but that's still pretty low key. Still pretty low key. I think Democrats here and Republicans, but it's shifting. Still mostly get along reasonably well. Yay, knock on wood. All right, so I'm going to leave it there. Thanks all for listening.